What's up, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and the internet seems to think Matt Walsh is about to get fired because he shared his opinion online. I don't know, but I do know that they had a former employee that had very strong opinions that shared them with a little less eloquency, who ended up getting fired. But Matt seems to be standing out on his own. Now, a lot of people have very strong opinions about what's going on in Iran right now. As a general default setting, I do not like war. I don't even really care for military operations. But I am smart enough to know that I don't know everything. And when there was a survey of the American people that came out Monday, and it was like 30% were against the war, 30% or 40% or 40% were against, 35% were for it, and then like there was a large contingent in the middle that had no real opinion on it. And I think it's a lot of wait and see. I lived through the recruitment of my peers into 9/11. I graduated high school in 2001. I had friends that went overseas. I had friends that signed up. I had friends that regretted signing up. I had friends that thought it was a great thing, and they feel very strongly about what they did. But what I do know is that looking back at it, I wonder if people have the same opinions. This issue with Iran, I think a lot of the trepidation is because of people around my age that remember the war on terror, whatever that was. They remember the endless war. They remember the thousands and thousands of Americans that were lost. And they remember now that we just left $50 billion in weapons to let the literal Taliban run Afghanistan. It feels like nothing was accomplished. If you're me and you're a layperson, if you're an expert in military intelligence, you're an expert in geopolitics, maybe you can, educate me in the comments. But Matt Walsh has come out, and many people believe he's about to get fired for some of these takes. I don't really think these takes are that spicy. This says here, Matt Walsh for the W, dang. If you left Daily Wire, you might actually have some influence. There's been a lot of people who hate the Daily Wire who have been very loudly hoping and trying to recruit Matt Walsh to go out on his own. That's a decision for Matt to make, on his own. I have a feeling Daily Wire pays him very well. I have a feeling he gets to do his movies that he wants to do and his documentaries that he wants to do. All that stuff becomes a lot more difficult out on your own. But if you decided to go out on his own, I would support that. I don't care for a lot of what the Daily Wire is up to, but I just don't watch their content. And it's pretty simple to see, Brett Cooper, Candace Owens both left, probably because they had differing opinions and or money. I think Candace was a little more obvious with, the differing opinions. Brett, I think, wanted to go out on her own to, get that bag because she's young enough. But you see here, Matt Walsh tweeting, so far we've heard that although we took out the whole Iranian regime, this was not a regime change war. And that although we obliterated their nuke program, we had to do this because of their nuke program. And although that Iran was not planning any attacks on the U.S., they also might have been, depending on who you ask. And although we're not fighting this war to free the Iranian people, now they are free, or might be, depending on who seizes power. And we have no idea who that will be. The messaging on this, to put it mildly, is confused. And that, I think, is very fair. As somebody who's trying to make heads or tails of this, it is an issue. We have clips of Marco Rubio saying essentially, well, we knew that Israel was going to attack and their attack would put our assets in the area at risk, so we joined the attack. So some people are saying, well, Israel forced us into it. Other people are saying, well, a preemptive strike, peace through strength, this kind of stuff. And whatever your slant is, I think, is how you interpret that stuff. But the messaging has been incredibly messy.
No, this whole thing, all of this, it's all about me.
And you see Thomas Massey coming in saying, I hope you don't get fired for this because it's true. I don't know why he would get fired for this, other than any and all criticism of this war gets immediately spun into anti-Semitism, or you have a problem with Jewish people, or everybody in the country, ooh, Ben's going to have a problem with this, blah, 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 blah. And I don't think what Matt said is incorrect even in the slightest. I don't know exactly what's going on. I don't know why we absolutely had to strike now. I don't know because I'm not the president. I don't have the information he has. And I think people's very visceral reaction to just being involved in any kind of conflict in the Middle East largely shaped by the last several that I would view as a complete failure. I wouldn't say Afghanistan's any better now than it was before. I don't know if Iraq is any better now than it was before. And I do know that lots of Americans died, and a lot of, Iraqis died and Afghans died. And, I still don't really understand, when George Bush says, well, God came down and told me I had to do this nonsense, He then wrote this, which is a little bit more spicy. I can't take the gaslighting, guys. I actually can't. Conservatives are now running around and saying Iran has been waging war on us for 47 years. Okay, then why didn't any of you call for an attack on Iran at any point until now? Why didn't you make the case for Trump ending the war and not starting it until precisely the moment when Trump did it? You and I both know that you're latching onto a talking point you never used until 45 seconds ago. You and I both know that almost every conservative influencer in the business was opposed to war with Iran until just now. I don't know anymore these days who is and who isn't a conservative influencer. I mean, you have the Hodge twins who on X post, stuff very critical of Trump, saying he's destroyed his legacy. But then on Facebook, they say, oh, I stand with Trump. So are they a conservative influencer? I wouldn't say so. They seem more like somebody who's just capitalizing on the grift. Now, some people have said, well, they have somebody else that posts on their Facebook and X. To that, I would say, well, whoever's job it is, why wouldn't they have similar messaging? The only real explanation for that is they know that their Facebook base is more MAGA focused and their X base is more anti-Israel or anti-war focused. And so they're just playing to whichever audience gets them the most clicks. That's just the truth of it. Is Nick a conservative influencer? Well, he thinks we would have been better under Kamala. He's saying that he's going to be voting for Democrats in the midterms. So I wouldn't say he's a conservative influencer. So the only, these are the people that I know of. Maybe he's talking about radio guys or people on Fox News. I don't watch Fox News. There's no reason to, outside of maybe watching Gutfeld occasionally, but I'm fine with just clips of that show. I don't have the time to dedicate to watching a late show talking about the news that I just covered all day. He then wrote, and now you're trying to using justification to stretch back decades. It doesn't make any sense. If you change your mind, fine, say so, explain why. You're allowed to change your mind. I've changed my mind about things, but don't try to rewrite history. Be honest about it. There's too much at stake to play these games. And I think that, people on one side are saying, Matt Walsh is nailing it. Unrelated, he's currently looking for future employment. I have no indication, and I have a lot of people in the industry that I talk to. I have no indication that Matt's job is on the line. And quite frankly, I think the Daily Wire allowed Candace Owens a lot of rope to say whatever she wanted to say, including being extremely inflammatory, until, they both clearly, it was clear to me that Candace Owens wanted out. They wanted her out, and so they parted ways. I don't necessarily think Daily Wire is like this spot where you're not allowed to have dissenting opinions, but the internet does think that. Matt Walsh tweeting about the Iran war from Daily Wire headquarters. Obviously, Ben Shapiro, I believe, is overly loyal to Israel, but he is Jewish. And so it's not like he's just some dude who's loyal to a country, but I think that you can't have dual loyalties. And I think that, ultimately, you're either America first or you're Israel first. And because those two things, while maybe sometimes align, they don't always align. And, this is, again, you see Matt here saying, so he's flat out telling us that we're in war with Iran because Israel forced our hand. This is basically the worst possible thing he could have said. Now, Rapper Response 47 did clip this a little bit out of context. There's more context that with Rubio, and this is what the clip
conducted
said.
This operation with a very clear goal in mind. I haven't got a chance to see a lot of reporting. I don't understand what the confusion is. Let me explain it to you, and I'll do it once again as clearly as possible. Perhaps you'll report it that way. The United States is conducting an operation to eliminate the threat of Iran's short-range ballistic missiles and the threat posed by their Navy, particularly to naval assets. That is what it is focused on doing right now, and it's doing quite successfully. I'll leave it to the Pentagon and the Department of War to discuss the tactics behind that and the progress that's being made. That is the clear objective of this mission. The second question that's been asked is, why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact, it bared to be true because, in fact,
So what he's saying can be two things. He's basically saying, well, if Israel was going to strike them, we knew that our bases would also be struck, so we had to take action. There's also the interpretation that was like, hey, we didn't want to get involved in this, but because Israel wanted to do what Israel wanted to do, we were forced into it. And that's how a lot of the mainstream media is reporting it. Shoe on head saying, break your chains, Matthew. A lot of people saying, again, there's more to that clip, but, people seem to think he's about to get fired. My feed is full of this kind of slanderous nonsense. You're not going to sway me to your side about lying to me. The Iranian regime can go to hell. I've spoken out against the Islamification of America more and more explicitly than most of the people supporting this war. This kind of BS doesn't land with me. The only thing I care about is when it comes to this operation or any other operation, literally the only thing I care about is, or have cared about, is whether or not it benefits our people or not. I'm not convinced that it does. And that's where I stand. And I'm open to be corrected, right? But the communication has been so poor from the administration that I don't know how this benefits the American people. If it does, then they need to do a better job, making an idiot like me understand that. But this is saying, are you surprised Matt Walsh would support the Iranian regime? It's like everybody is so obsessed with their side in this, meaning, let me be very clear. I don't like Israel side and I'm a strong supporter of Trump's side. Would that be the other side of it? And I don't really care about Israel for the same reasons that Matt Walsh says. I care about America. And so if this war, let's be honest, it's pretty, I guess if we can argue over semantics, but if this doesn't affect or doesn't improve things directly for the American people, then I oppose it. And I have not been convinced, whether it's just through, poor communication or my own, infantile understanding of geopolitics, that it does affect Americans or improve things for Americans. And that's what Matt Walsh that's all he's saying. But everybody on, the Israel bad side and then the mega good and then the Democrats who are Israel bad, they're all like, come on, Matt, come join us. I don't think that's a way to convince him. And that's not really the way to convince anybody. I think what we just need is exactly what Matt Walsh called for, and that's better communication by the American government. I look forward to continuing to see his takes, agree with some of them, disagree with others, and moving on with my life without obsessing over which team I'm on. I hope you're informed by this video. If you were, please do leave a like on it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe or follow down below, and we'll talk to you again real soon.